Everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 793. Today I'm going to talk about the altered TCG, and I have here two of the starter decks, and I also got some booster packs, which I'll open on camera. I'll open one of them and scan the cards into the app, which there is a companion app that goes along with this. So based on the name of the game, if you've not heard of this game, it's a trading card game. It does a lot of things differently than, your traditional kind of Magic the Gathering or whatever style trading card game. It's a two-player head-to-head, although there are some variant rules and stuff for multiplayer and team games and things like that. The main difference, and then we'll jump down to the table here and I'll show you some of the mechanics, is it is very much a head-to-head sort of combat game, but you're not really like damaging the other player or attacking their creatures or that kind of thing. You're sort of vying for control and progressing these two expeditions of your kind of main hero expedition and then the companion expedition. You're trying to get them to kind of meet in the middle before your opponent can do that. So as soon as your two markers, your hero marker and your companion marker meet, instantly you'll win the game. There are cards, though, of course, to kind of mess with your opponent's cards that they play and, to destroy creatures. And there's a reserve mechanic, and there's some other things which we'll talk about here when we go down to the table. And I also will show you a little bit about like the ecosystem and the plan, sort of, rarity scheme, how the companion app's going to work. A little bit of this is going to be some kind of speculation. I'll have a link to a thread specifically talking about like the implications of the rarity scheme that they've chosen here, which I think is actually fascinating, not to spoil kind of the end of the review. But I'll put a link to that there. It's on BoardGameGeek.com, and it kind of poses the questions. Some of it is speculative, but I think it's well grounded in in everything that we know so far. So I'll show you a little bit of the companion app, opening a booster, scanning the cards in, and then talk a little about like online play and some of the different ways that's going to work. Sort of playing online with your physical cards in a sense. But yeah, let's go down to the table and then I'll come back and tell you what I think. Okay, I've got the game set up here like it might look at the start of a game. Now these mats here, these are just paper mats. There's a little poster on the back of them. And you'll get one of these in each of the starter boxes. So here I've got the two starter boxes with two mats. So each player kind of has their little play area like so. And they do have, neoprene mats and things like that you can buy. And I do think at least these paper mats, if not a neoprene one, are going to be useful to kind of organize these different zones here, which I'll show you. That definitely is going to be useful, but of course, as you get familiar with the game, you may not necessarily need a mat. In addition to the mats and the cards, you also get this little like two-sided fold-out. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Doesn't fold out very big. I will say I did learn the game from this. Didn't watch any videos or anything like that, and it was really clear on what to do. And so even though it's small, I think it is pretty concise and efficient in giving you the rules. You also will get a couple of these cheat sheet cards here, which are useful. Some of the iconography there, and then the phase of the turn, which is handy the first couple times you play. And you get some of these little tokens over here. These are pretty thin, but they do the trick. I do believe there's some like acrylic ones. This was a Kickstarter where you could get some of this extra stuff, the neoprene mats and everything. Now, in addition to the two starters, the publishers also did send me about 12 of these booster packs, and then also a couple of packs of sleeves, which you can see here. This is what the card back is, but it's in a sleeve in this case. So I got that, and I'll show you some of the booster stuff here in a minute. Now, the way the game works, like I said at the beginning, you can see we have these row of cards here. Now, each starter set comes with its own little set, so you only need one of these to play. So you can see you've got a hero card and a companion card, and these little tokens here, which I'll just peel off of here like this. They'll start at either end. So you've got the hero end, the companion end, and then you'll have these three cards in the middle, which are shuffled up face down, and then set face down there in the middle. And then as these tokens progress, then you'll reveal these. And the thing to note about these is they have these different like terrain types here. And this is sort of the value or the certain type that you're trying to achieve based on where your token is at as it moves through these spaces here. So if both players' tokens are on here, they're both trying to achieve kind of the forest value, where if they move up to here, then you can see they've got, you know, forest and water. And then sometimes it can be such that maybe my token is in this space and then yours is in this. So you are only focused on the green, where I'm focused on the red and blue, even though we're doing combat in the same expedition. That will make a lot more sense in a second. But as I said, you're trying to advance markers from this side as well as this side into some point where they're going to meet. So the first time somebody advances off of here, you're going to flip this card, and we're just going to flip that right over. And so maybe I advanced here, but the red player there did not advance yet. So you can see now, when I'm playing cards to this expedition on this side of my hero card, I'm going to be focused on the mountains and the forests, whereas the other player is still focused on all three. There's only the three terrain types there. Now, if we're on the terrain side over here, this expedition, we're still focused on all three in that case. So it can be a little bit different what each player is trying to do kind of asymmetrically on each turn there. So of course you're going to be doing that by playing cards. Now to start the game, every player is going to draw 6 cards out of their deck. You can take a mulligan. You're going to have to choose 3 of these cards at the start of the game, and you're going to put it somewhere down here below the rest of your cards in a little mana reserve here, or mana pile. So you're going to start the game with 3 mana right out the gate. And then each round after that, at the start of the round, you're going to draw 2 cards, and then at that point you can choose at this point to put 1 card face down into the mana pile there. So you're going to slowly build up, you know, a very consistent linear mana curve, like a lot of games, Hearthstone versus WoW trading card games, stuff like that. And we can see that here in our first phases of play. So in the morning, you're going to change first player. So you've got a little first player token here that you can pass back and forth. And then we're going to zoom in here. You're going to ready your cards. So any cards that you may have tapped, or excuse me, exhausted, or maybe some cards up here that you've exhausted, you're going to ready all your cards. And then you're going to draw 2 cards, like I said, and then put 1 card from your hand into mana. And then that's all the morning phase. Easy enough. Noon phase is you're going to apply any noon effects. So these take place over the course of a day. So if you've got a card that says do something at noon, at that point is when you will do it. And then you're going to have the main part of the phase here, which is the afternoon phase. Go back and forth, taking turns, playing cards and executing actions. Then you have the dusk phase, when you're going to compare scores, basically, in these different terrain types. And whoever was winning, technically, I'll explain how it works in a second, is going to advance their markers on both sides. And then we have the night phase, which I'll get to in a little bit. So we've done our morning, we've done our noon, there's no noon effects. Now we're going to start playing cards. So on your turn, you can do as many free actions as you want, in any order you want. But as soon as you play a card out here, then your turn is over. As soon as you play the card, turn is over, go to the other player. They can do as many free actions as they choose. As soon as they play a card to one of their expeditions or elsewhere, then their turn is over. And just go back and forth. And then once you pass, you no longer play a card. Then you are done for the round. And then the other player can take as many turns as they can. So let's pick up some of these cards here and take a look at them. So your most common cards are these characters that you're going to be playing to one of your 2 expeditions. And you can see they have values, sort of power, in each of the different terrain types. You've got green, brown, or red, and blue. So if I play this here, this card here, you can see I'm going to be contributing 1, 1, and 2 power there. Now the cost to play this card from your hand is this value. So I will have 3 mana, of course, to start the game. So I can tap 1 of my mana down there, and I can play this out there. At the end of your turn, any characters are going to go to your reserve. So if we look here, you've got space for 2 cards in your reserve, and then a little bit of overflow there. And also on this side, you have space for landmarks and then overflow. So at the end of the turn, you can keep 2 landmarks around, and you can keep 2 reserve cards around. But until that point, till the end of the round of the night phase, you can have as many as you want there. Then you've got to discard down to 2 reserve and 2 landmarks. Reserve is a little bit interesting. It's a little bit of a different type of effect here. So once this card, after we've resolved the scores here, these will come down to the reserve. Then let's say he's in the reserve or she's in the reserve. To play this card out of the reserve back in, then you will pay this cost down here. So that's the from hand cost, and that's the from reserve cost. In this case, they're the same, but oftentimes they're different. So you're going to go back and forth like that, and then you're going to compare values. Well, like I said, we're going to look here at the beginning here. So in this case, all values are really in play for both characters because they're both on terrain that has, you know, all 3 icons. So all you have to do to advance your token there is to win outright one of those power values. So if I have the highest value of green, but the opponent has the highest value of blue, then in that case we will both move forward, like so. Now if for some reason my opponent here had the highest value in blue, but I didn't have a discrete higher value in the others, I was either underneath in blue and everything else, or I was tied, then I would not move, okay? You have to have a clear highest value in one of those types that's just displayed where you're at. Okay, but let's say that did happen, okay? So then red would move in that case, and then I'm here. So now on the next turn, red only cares about, on this side, on this expedition over here, the mountains, okay? If they have high blues and greens, it doesn't matter to them on this side, other than trying to prevent me from moving. But it will not progress this expedition for them. So you can see a little bit of the asymmetry there. Whereas if we go on this side, over here, you can see red, in this case, still cares about all 3. In this side here, purple, cares about green and brown, or red, but not blue in that case, for progressing their expedition. So again, you just have to win one of them outright, and then you will move your expedition. And it is often happens that, you know, both will move, or sometimes neither of them will move, or one will move. And that's really the sum total of kind of the main game flow. And again, like I said, you'll discard down to 2 landmarks and 2 reserves. Now where the game starts to get more and more interesting here is we'll just look at this little icon cheat sheet here. So you can see this icon here basically means when I'm played from anywhere. This one means when I'm played from your hand. This one means when I'm played from your reserve. So if it's got that hand icon, then if you play it from reserve, then it won't happen. But here you can see at the bottom of this card here, the next permanent you play this turn counts 1 less. And this means you have to discard this card from the reserve to play it. So maybe I would play this card, you know, it's cheap to get it out there and maybe help out with the expedition. But what I'm really trying to do strategically is get this into the reserve, because I've got this nice permanent that I want to get out maybe a turn early, that I can then discard this on my following turn once this is in the reserve to help pay for that other card. There's some other concepts here to be interested in. So exhaust, we all know what that means. You tap the card and then do what it says. Fleeting means instead of if a character has fleeting, for example, when I play this, it won't go to the reserve, it'll go straight to my discard pile off to the side. So it's very temporary. Now anchored, and there are tokens for this to help remind you. Sometimes a card that doesn't have anchored as an intrinsic effect, another card will put that effect on them. You'll put this little token here to remind you. So instead of discarding down here to the reserve, it's going to have the anchor token on them. So instead of that, we're just going to discard the anchor token. So it's going to live out here for another turn. It's like a free play. It lasts a little bit. Oh, and finally, there is also this is sleep rule, and there are tokens again for that as well. And what that basically does is it will zero out these values. So these are effectively 0. The rest of the card is still effective and in play. And there's a whole other mess of, you know, different abilities and stuff on the cards. So one thing to note here, I think this is the right example. So you can see this one here. This is actually a rare card. 2 ways you can tell: by the little kind of sort of brass gold icon at the bottom, and also that it has no border. Now we can see here on the back of this one here, it's the same card-ish, same named card, Foundry Mechanic, but you can see this one has a border around it. This one does not. Now the stats are a little different. This one's 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, and then I believe the effects are the exact same. Yeah, the effects are the exact same. The cost is the same. So you say, oh, Joel, why would I ever take this card in my deck over this one? Okay, well, we're going to start talking about the ecosystem now. Now, when you build your deck, and these decks that the starters come with, they are you know, official decks. They're not undersized or oversized. There are 39 cards in the main deck, plus the 1 card for the hero that sits out there. And that is the official tournament size deck. You need at least 39 cards plus a hero. You can have more cards if you want, but that's the minimum. And these are like that. But when you build this deck here of 39 cards, you can only ever have 3 of the same named cards. Great. So you say, well, why don't I just take 3 of the rares? Because you can only have 15 total rares in the entire deck. So out of 39 cards, whatever divided by 3, that's 13 different cards if you did 3 of each. Then you could only do less than half of those would be rares. And I know in a lot of these other TCGs tournament decks, there sometimes, not always, are just full of rares that are very expensive and hard to track down. So in this, you have a limit, a strict limit of 15 rare cards. Now there are also unique cards, which I'm not sure. I may have some in this, but you can at most have, I think it's 1 unique card in your entire deck. And what a unique card is similar to this. It may have the same name here, but it might be, slightly different. It might have a lot better abilities. It might be make it cost more though. And apparently there's a few thousand of these floating around. And if you buy like a whole booster case, you'll probably get 1 or 2, or I don't know what the exact distribution is going to be. Like I said, I will put a link to that one discussion on Board Game Geek. So again, you will have a somewhat unique, it's not like completely procedurally generated, just, random skills and abilities like Keyforge or something like that. But it's kind of like a happy medium between, more traditional games and then this. And I should say also the starter decks here do come with some tokens and stuff like that. Certain effects will just, have you summon different token characters and stuff like that in there as well. And a couple other things here is we'll go ahead and crack open a booster, but I wanted to show you a couple of these. These do come in the starter set and also in the boosters. These are foilers, and you can see there's a code here to scan, and you've probably seen that on all the cards here. There's QR codes to scan at the bottom. Don't worry, I've already scanned everything I've showed you. What you do is in the app you scan them, and then you kind of own that card digitally, and you will never find, as far as I know, any foil cards in the packs that you open. But what you can do is you can unlock the ability in the app to purchase a sort of a print and play type of card for any common that you've already scanned. So I've scanned this in, so now I have a common foiler, and I can go in and find this card. I say I really like this card, I want a common version of it, and this is in my digital collection. I can sort of in the app combine that and unlock that, and then get a foil version of that. And there's rare foilers and stuff like that too. So that's kind of an interesting way that it works. So let's go ahead and look at the app. So here I just cracked open this booster and I've got the app. Now a couple of things you can see here. The main thing that's working now is that you can scan cards into the app. So I can go here to my collection, just load that up, and you can see all the cards. So I can click on this card, take a look at a close-up version of it, go to access details, and then if there's like rules questions, other info, then here all kinds of stuff about that card, you can do that. And you can just sort of scan the card as well outside of the app, just with your camera on your phone, and it'll take you right to a page there with all this kind of same type of information, right? So if we go back down here, we can see there's a couple things here. Decks, which is, I thought, oh, maybe they just implemented it, but it still says coming soon there. So you can build decks in here. And then there's the market, okay? So you can actually take, and some of this is speculative because it's not implemented yet, so I don't know exactly how it's going to be. So you can effectively sell the digital copy of your card online through the marketplace. And I believe the publisher there will take a small cut of that. And then somebody else can then, print and play that, order that card. So it'll come, official from the card stock, that with the rest of the game. But then effectively what you can do is you cannot use your card in a official tournament because you've sort of sold the digital rights to it. Now you can still use it around your kitchen table and stuff like that. So if you don't really care about tournaments and you're just like, I want to get a bunch of cards and then sell my whole collection online and just play at home, I think that's going to be possible. Like I said, I'll link that link in the Board Game Geek. But yeah, or you can like lend cards to somebody and say, hey, my friend's playing in a tournament this weekend, I can't make it. He really wants to use this card. I can lend it to him digitally even. So I'm not sure exactly how that's going to all work, but it's pretty interesting how that's going to work. The other part of this, which isn't implemented yet, which I'll talk more about in the review, is you'll be able to play with your collection online using Board Game Arena. Now right now you can go to Board Game Arena and play with any of the starter decks. Anybody can go do that for free right now. And that's how I've been playing this game online. And then we've played probably half a dozen games or a little bit more than that. And I've really been enjoying it, but we'll talk about that in the review. So I think effectively what you're going to be able to do is actually play with decks that you build online. So you'll have the physical copy, and you'll never really have a digital only copy. There will always be a physical representation of it somewhere, but you may have a physical copy that is not, you don't have the digital rights to. I hope that makes sense. So I just want to show the scanning part here, just because I have to make sure I scan these so none of you all scan my video and steal my cards from me. So we're going to go here like that. See, it's going to load that up there at the bottom. Oh, taking a second there. Usually the first couple takes a minute. And then I'm just going to do them really quick here. So next card, and you're not hearing anything, but you can kind of feel in the phone here as these load up, it kind of does like a little vibration. There we go. So I just basically do this for a pack, and it's pretty easy, right? Just scan it all in there. I'll take a look at these cards in a little bit. I'm just curious what we have here. But I want to show you like what it kind of shows as you do it. Just in this part, you know, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't really work yet, like the deck building and stuff like that. There. Okay. So there, we've got all these I can add to my collection. It says 13 cards scanned, 12 new cards in my collection. That's probably because this card is a token card. So this isn't really ever going to get added to your collection. So we've got those in my collection there, so I can go back to here, see if I got any uniques. I don't think I did. So we can sort by rarity, descending, I guess. And this is a rare, it's not a unique. So you can see the card types there somewhere. There we go. Rare. I don't have the right of foil. If I had like I said, this is where you can go and unlock it. I unlocked one of the cards earlier with a common foil thing. You just go and here you can do foiler at the top. There you see, so you can trade and give and wish list cards and all kinds of stuff in there. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how all that works. Okay, so that is a little bit about the altered TCG. I'll use my 3 pillars of review here just to kind of get things started. Obviously it's a 2-player only game, although there are rules for multiplayer and team play, which I've not messed with. There's a little thing you can scan on the rule sheet there to pull up the rules online for that. Play time. I have played all my games on Board Game Arena. Like I said, you can, in the walkthrough, you can go through, you can play all the starter decks on Board Game Arena right now for free. So it's a great way to test the game out. I've had an absolute blast playing it, first of all. And I think there's kind of 2 parts I want to talk about here. One is the gameplay and all that stuff. And a little bit I talked about at the end of the walkthrough, kind of the rarity scheme, sort of the ecosystem of like trading and selling cards, the digital rights to cards. I don't have a lot else to say about it other than what I said during that, just to kind of describe it to you. I think it all sounds really interesting. It sounds really cool. You know, one of my favorite trading card games was Warhammer Champions, and unfortunately, I think the gameplay and the mechanisms and everything were excellent. But the digital ecosystem there really didn't work, because in that game, you could get the packs, scan them in, and then use them online. But then you also got free cards online from doing, like, you know, daily quests and stuff like that. It was like a gacha game. And they were really generous with the cards. And so like I had like everything multiple times over just by playing like a little bit every day, you know, and not spending any money other than like the initial like booster box that I got and scanned in. And the rest of this, and the game just quickly went away, which is unfortunate because it was a great game mechanically. Really had a lot of fun with it. Now this doesn't seem like it's going to have that similar problem. And I also, so there's that side of it. And then also kind of on the physical side, on like the rarity stuff, I'm really intrigued about, you know, being limited to 15 rares. I think that's a big thing. I think it's going to be really cool. I think it's going to be neat to be able to like get a deck and get like some cards. You don't have to really chase a full, you know, rare set of certain cards, because other cards will be kind of doing the same thing, but won't quite be, you know, as good. But you should be able to pull off the parts of the card that are important, like the combo-y parts. Like the card I showed you, the stats were a little bit different, but the main effect was the same of that reserve play. Now it's great to have, the rare version, which has a little bit better stats, because that's going to help you, in the long run, win the expedition that it's a part of. But, if you're using the card, your main purpose for including it in the deck is the combo part, then, you've still got that, and you've still got a common version of that, and those are going to be easier to find. I think that's very interesting. I also like the idea of the unique card. That's pretty cool. And, I think if people have problems with that, hey, you've got a card that is somehow, godly, then you could play tournaments where you can't use unique cards. If you can go either way. Like, the game is flexible, in my opinion, that way. The tournament organizers can decide how they want to do that. Because I can kind of look at that both ways. It could be kind of a feel bad if a unique card ends up being particularly broken, within your play area, and everybody's like, Billy's got that friggin' card, and feel bad, but it's also kind of cool on the other hand, where it's like, oh, that's it's the unique card, so it's like the only one in the world. That's just neat. So enough about that. I think that'll shake itself out. Now, from the perspective of this review, I would recommend, first of all, trying the game of Board Game Arena 100%. I'd also recommend go ahead and picking up like one of each starter. I've only got the 2 here, but I've either played with or against. I think I've played with all of the starters. If not, I've played against it and had a lot of fun. There is some good variety there, some different mechanics and sort of play styles with the cards. One of the decks is very like, I want to say artifact, but it's like landmark heavy. It's like those permanent cards, playing off those, getting some of those out, juicing your engine up that way. One is, it's very much like a blue deck, like a control deck kind of idea. There's one that plays with the reserve a lot. There's all kinds of there's cool things there. There's one that I don't have, this one here, that has the dice rolling in it, so you just get a d6 or whatever, and like that one can go either way, but it's actually really a lot of fun to play that one. Like if you put a card out, you might boost it. So there's little boost tokens, which I didn't show you, that will, every time you boost a card, it gets +1 in all 3 stats. And so sometimes it'll, like if you roll a 6, it'll get like 3 boosts, and then it'll get anchored, so it'll stay out there, and that kind of stuff. But if you roll 1, you got to discard it. If you roll like 2, 3, 4, 5, it just gets 1 boost, and it's just a normal card. So it's fun, it's just a fun deck. So there's a lot of cool stuff that they can do in the kind of design space with the permanents, the reserves, playing from hand, getting cards back, getting cards out of your discard pile, all that kind of traditional stuff as well. And then also with the moving of the tokens. I mean, there was one card in one of the decks that was pretty expensive, but it would move, a token back a space, that kind of stuff. So it seems like there's a lot of room for them to kind of monkey with the design space here, which is really, really cool. Now, I will say here from, and again, just with starter deck play, I've seen a lot of games shake out differently, which I think is a good sign. The first couple of times we played it, you saw kind of like a very sort of natural linear progression of like, oh, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rounds. It was always like, okay, and somebody would get ahead a little bit and then they would win. So it was very kind of the same, not uninteresting, but after a couple of times of that happening, it's like, okay, are all the games going to really just last like, 6 rounds ish? I saw some other games where it was very different. I saw a game where it was very brutal and the other person got crushed by it, and they really didn't get to move up much. And there was another one where I remember distinctly, because I ended up losing, but I was down by a lot. But I took my deck a little bit to get going, and then I almost pulled off the win. And it was interesting because usually, in the first few games, the tokens would kind of meet, just off of the center. But in that particular game, both players' tokens were on the one side, so they couldn't get the one out, but the one was going all the way across and the other one was going all the way across this way, and they just couldn't get those other ones because I think we were getting a little bit smarter about our card play. And it was really cool because I was able to stall out the one expedition and then move my other one along and just hold, because they were about to win like a few rounds in a row. It was like, I just kind of move one of these, and I just kept preventing it. And I got my other one right up to meet the other one. And actually, frankly, I made a mistake in that game. It was kind of like a rules interpretation. So I was like, oh, this card doesn't work like that by the time the turn got there. And I was like, oh, I messed that up. So I might have won that game if I hadn't, been such a noob. But that was really cool. I was like, that's a great sign that you can see the kind of dynamic you know, rollout and emergence of how the turns work. I don't remember how many rounds I went to, because it was probably 10 rounds or something. And it was cool, but it was a lot of fun, a lot of back and forth, a lot of tension, you know, what kind of cards am I going to draw and that kind of thing. So I thought that was a really good sign, because that was a cool game with just 2 starters, you know, without any deck building. That's a great sign. You know, and the other thing that's neat is I think the game seems to lend itself to design, you know, not a lot of like, you know, deck screw or card draw screw or mana screw or anything like that. You know, you start off with 3 mana. Like, you know, why have those first 2 turns sometimes, you know, depending on the deck and the game, you know, where you just like, oh, I played a mana, pass, your turn. I played a mana, pass, your turn. Here's my little 1/1 creature or whatever. It's like 3 mana. Okay. So I could probably put 2 cards out or 1 decent card. And so that's kind of a good way to get the game rolling. I like that. And I also really like the whole reserve side. Because that's kind of the thing that's interesting about the reserve, and I'll kind of leave with this thought on the review, is you've seen that card. You've already dealt with that card as the opponent of the reserve card. And then you see it go into the reserve. And there's an interesting sort of like, it's not like bluffing, although you could sometimes do that, because you're like, oh, well, I know they can play that. I know how much it costs. I know what it's going to do. I know where it might go, either this expedition or the other expedition. So I like how it kind of messes with your head just a little bit about what they can do, because, you know, a lot of times you sit down and play a deck. There's no real meta yet until you know what's in the deck, or you're playing in a tournament and there's an established meta, right? But when you're sitting down fresh and playing it with somebody, as soon as that card goes in the reserve, there's a meta. And you're like, okay, they've got this. I've already seen it. It's not gone now. It may come back. And it may come back and do something a little different or worse than what it did before, because it might have a reserve effect or whatever, some other effect. So that's a cool little piece of head game in there that I really, really like. And it's just really cool. I really like how that part works out. Yeah, so anyway, I definitely recommend, you know, picking up starters, trying it on Board Game Arena, check out some booster packs. We'll see how the app ends up shaking out. Like I said, you can't deck build. There's no marketplace yet. But that's not going to stop anybody from playing. You know, it's free on Board Game Arena. That's fantastic. I think that's a great move. And picking up a few different starters, that's going to be great as well. And personally for me, I'm going to pick up some more of this, because I like to be able to kind of tinker and build decks in person and kind of lay cards out and stuff like that. I don't like to go into an app necessarily and build decks and like theory craft. I like to get stuff laid out and, like, you know, run through some phantom turns and stuff like that. But then theoretically, I'll be able to go play all kinds of people on Board Game Arena and not have to wait for, I don't think anybody in my group is going to get into this at all. This is not the kind of group of gamers that I hang out with. But I'll be able to kind of do that, and I can go try that thing out online, and that'll be great. Maybe I can trick some of them to get into this. I doubt it. But yeah, I think that's just really cool. I'm excited for that, and to play around with some of these other cards. I mean, just the few cards I've looked through in the boosters has just been like, huh, okay. So I really want to dive in and play around with that a little bit and see how it goes. So that's Altered. So thanks.